This is the Zelos podcast with Rocky Snyder, the show that's all about the pros behind the pros.
Welcome to this episode of the Zelos podcast. I'm Rocky Snyder, and this week we're talking NBA strength training and conditioning with, well, who are you going to go to with the NBA? Maybe the NBA champions for this year, the world champion Lakers. So with me is the assistant strength conditioning coach, Ed Streit. Ed, welcome.
Thanks, Rocky. Thanks for having me. Really look forward to talking and mixing it up and chatting.
Dude, I just got to be transparent right now. And, raised just north of Boston, taking the T into the garden through the 80s and watching Mikhail Bird and Parrish, DJ, and Ainge and going against Worthy, Kareem, Magic, Rambus, all those guys. It's really hard to actually have, to say congratulations, especially this year with your championship and tying my boys with a number of NBA championships. But I'm going to try and be a bigger man than I think I am. So congratulations.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we're all tied up now. Obviously this is my first year with the Lake Show. And being from Chicago, obviously I worked for the Bulls for a couple of years. We'll kind of touch on that later, but you can see the kind of jersey behind me. But I grew up a Bulls fan, so I never thought I'd be wearing purple and yellow, purple and gold. But here we are, and I got some nice hardware to add to the collection now after my first season with them. So I'm sure we'll kind of chat a little bit more about that.
I bet the only thing that's holding me that's holding some happiness is that there's an asterisk, I think, in my mind next to this season, but you can look at it either way because you had to do some true magic to get where you guys got, especially right. With a condensed season, which I'd love to talk about too. But let's just kick it off with, you mentioned you were at the Bulls, but just for those that are wondering, how do you become a strength conditioning coach for the NBA champion Lakers? What happened? How did you get there?
Man, it was a very, very long road. It feels like it. I'm only 31, but feels like I've been doing this for about 31 years, and I'll kind of tell you why here shortly. But started off, being from the south side of Chicago, growing up there, I fell in love with weightlifting at a very early age. I had my first gym membership when I was 12 years old. I remember it was a little corner gym called the End Zone, right on the 111th and Sawyer. And that's kind of where it all began. And then obviously playing every sport you can think of in high school, I kind of fell in love with the weight room in that process throughout those times as well. I go to Illinois State for college and study exercise science. It's something I've always been passionate about. I kind of like, my philosophy is you only have one body during your time here, right? So why not, master that and get the most out of your body. That was something that's kind of always appealed to me. Started actually athletic training, then I went PT, and then I realized, I could add basketball and the weight room together, create that as a and get paid to do that. So from my senior year, I did an internship, my first internship with DePaul, and Matt Calloway was my supervisor there. That was my first ever exposure to strength conditioning. I'm so grateful to have Mac as, one of my mentors throughout my entire career, and spent a little over a season there, worked with all 13 teams, learned a lot, grew a lot as a coach, as a person. From there, went to intern at Arizona State University with Rich Wenner, knowing that kind of position would turn into a graduate assistant position at some point. I went out there on my own dime, made some ends meet, working another job on the side, and everyone has their story. That was a big part of mine. That's where I grew a lot as a coach, in the weight room at 5 a.m. and if we had a game, leaving at 10 and then go work my other job at night and do it all over again. So it added some gray hairs up here, but I'm very, very grateful for those experiences. So that was with Rich Wenner, who's been a strength coach there, I think, for over 34 years now. One of the true OGs in the game. From there, got another internship with the Chicago Bulls, interned there for a couple seasons, and then was hired on full-time as an assistant, which is a dream come true, especially being from the south side of Chicago.
How did that happen? How did you just reach out and apply for an internship, or was there a connection that was made?
No. So Matt Calloway actually taught me, networking is critical no matter what you do in life. Anything you do in life, if you're trying to get ahead, you should network your ass off. So that was something I was very fortunate to learn at a young age. And that's actually how I got the internship at Arizona State University. I went to visit friends at ASU for spring break and shot Rich Winter an email. Hey, can we link up and just talk shop? We talked shop, hit it off. And he was like, I have this GA position, won't open for a year. Come intern, and, the rest is history. Now, when I was interning and a GA at Arizona State, which is an NBA city, Phoenix, right, Tempe's right outside of Phoenix, I was kind of a pest, but, I knew some of the NBA guys, and I would shoot them, an email, a text, something. Hey, if you guys need a place to train, you're more than welcome to come here. Or if you want to get coffee on me, let's link up, let's talk shop. I'd love to, just meet you. A lot of those emails went unanswered, which, I get now. I get how busy the NBA season is, so no hard feelings. But a couple of those emails were answered, and as a kid in that position, that's like Christmas when you get that email back. So that's actually kind of how the Bulls position came about. I emailed Nick Papendick, who was the head strength coach there at the time, and we were just talking over coffee, and their intern position was opening up in a couple months, and we hit it off, and the rest is kind of history.
Wow. Now, what I normally see is people that are strength coaches, they drift toward becoming athletic trainers, and then from there they become physical therapists. But that's quite unique. You went in the opposite direction. You started studying athletic training and physical therapy, and then decided on strength coaching. What was the reasoning behind that? I mean, what inspired you to go upstream, so to speak?
Yeah. So this is kind of a funny story, but little naive me, it's very interesting. So doing my hours, my volunteer hours for athletic training, it was kind of like you'd always look down the hall or to the PTs or something, and as you're as a young intern or volunteer, people don't give you much time, much thought, much of anything, and you're usually dealing with an athlete who's injured, and not, if they're competitive, they're probably not happy about being injured. So I'm sitting here dealing with these pouty athletes. They don't want to be there, and that may just that whole energy is contagious. So it was kind of like I don't know if I really want to do this. And then same thing, I went the PT route and was doing those hours, and I felt like some of those people, you could tell them what to do, how to do it. It's going to make you better, show them all the research in the world. And a lot of people wouldn't do it. Some of them didn't want to get back to work. And I was told that by two of them, like, I'm slow cooking this, I'm taking my time. So it was just kind of like, okay. And then I figured, instead of helping the people that have already been injured, looking, through the glass into the weight room, I can go this route and hopefully keep these people from getting injured, and reduce the likelihood of that. So that's kind of how that all came about, and I'm very grateful for that happened. Now I have the weight room in basketball, two of my favorite things in the whole wide world, and I'm getting paid to do those. So
that's great. Let's talk a little bit about injury for right now, because you just brought it up. Helping to reduce the likelihood of injury. We can't prevent it, but we can sure give them better odds, right?
Love that.
Because
love that.
Anything's going to happen. So what is it? I mean, there was a time that I'm going to say when you were probably watching Jordan and Pippen and Cartwright and the rest of them getting their rings and getting their championships, and you're probably in grade school. But that was the time in the NBA where there was a tremendous amount of support in the NBA's high top or three-quarter top, and all of that support actually diminished the feedback that those nerve endings, or we call them proprioceptors or mechanoreceptors, were feeding the brain to tell the athlete where the foot was. So they saw a higher incident rate of inversion sprains, ankle sprains, and that led to knee issues and so on. So now the shoes have changed and have given them less support, but we're still seeing injuries, of course, on the court. What are the most common injury sites that you're trying to reduce the likelihood of?
So you kind of hit it on the head. I mean, talking about the foot, that's one of the biggest areas of injury in our sport, especially with rolled ankles and other, contact issues. And like you said, reducing the likelihood of injuries. We can't predict anything. It's a contact sport. You go up for a rebound, someone's got their foot under you, something's bound to happen. We can't really train for that in the weight room. I mean, I guess you could if you're sticking things under people's feet, but if they roll your ankle on your time, probably going to be out of a job pretty soon. But yeah, so to touch on some of the most common injury areas, obviously the foot and ankle, that kind of works. It correlates, right up to the knee. Like, it can't go down, so it's going to go up. So usually most of our injuries are lower body with the ankle, knee, some hip issues, some low back, especially if you have an older roster. And then for your bigs, you might even get into like some shoulder issues, but I would say the lower body injuries are most common with the foot, ankle, and knees.
So what kind of approaches or techniques or exercise selection are you typically going to put into somebody's program? Are there going to be foot and ankle movements or mobility drills or strengthening drills? Is there balance coordination? Obviously, there's a lot of agility going on, but what are some of the go-tos that you like to implement with your, whether the starting five or the entire crew or even just the farm team?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And especially with our roster this past season, we had one of the oldest rosters in the league. That was something that was very critical for us, was foot and ankle health. And I think one thing that really helped us was we implemented a lot of isometric calf work and seated calf work, just for that Achilles complex, just to keep that strong, durable, and keep guys available. That's probably one of the biggest things that we've added now in this setting. Time is short. Guys are in and out. There's so much going on with individual workouts, practice, this, that, and we're very fortunate. We have a great culture with the Lakers, and guys love to get in the weight room. Like on a game day, we have anywhere from 10 to 14 guys come in pregame, which is kind of unheard of. But that being said, with the time restrictions that we have, you have to be really efficient with what you're doing with these guys and not waste their time. Keep them engaged too. So we will touch on a couple correctives, whether that be for hip mobility, low back health, core strength, and then address the foot and ankle, and then we get into our training.
As I see it, it really boils down to the nervous system, because that is the governing body for all movement, right? And if we can train the nervous system appropriately, then the joints are going to respond, and therefore the connective tissue surrounding it, whether it be ligaments, tendons, muscle, fascia, whatever we want to consider, is going to have to respond too. So, like, you're familiar with Gary Gray and the Gray Institute, and he has all these different foot positions, right? If you count them all out, there's 27 foot positions that you can achieve in some type of stance. So the question to you, Ed, is when you're training the NBA players, are you encouraging them out of the typical parallel stance or split stance into maybe something that's everted, one inverted, one everted? Are you getting them into more actual specific places that they may find themselves on the court to better prepare better feedback through the nervous system?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that we do too, we'll go like just through kind of our, mobility assessment. And one thing that we really value is, squatting guys and squats, deadlifts, some of your more traditional lifts, to kind of, actually load tissues in a fast manner and really get some good training. But one thing that we do, we'll go through like a hip scour to see where that athlete, their acetabulum sits, to kind of see where they get the most range of motion. And that might be feet parallel, feet rotated out, 1 foot, like there's those are bony limitations you can't really work around, but you can get the most out of their range of motion and get them stronger throughout those ranges. So we do kind of implement different angles. One thing we also do is to with our population, these guys have been chronically rolling their ankles since the age of, when's AAU start now? When you're 3, it feels like. Guys could, are dribbling basketballs when the basketballs are as big as them. So, we have chronic ankle rolls. So we'll kind of take the ankle out of it sometimes and put these guys on a squat wedge, just to kind of really get those knees over toes, really get some good quad activation, more time under tension for those patellofemoral issues, and really load those tissues.
So you were talking about the anatomy of the skeletal structure and how the the femur inserts into the pelvis and what that shape is like. Do you notice that there is almost like a position specific uh, pelvis type, if you would, or hip position? Like, is it different for the guards compared to the centers because of their height and their body shape? Have you kind of been scratching your head at that? Do you notice anything like that, or not?
Not really. Guys are all over the place. Like I've been blessed to work with some phenomenal lifters, and I've had 7-footers who can overhead squat ass to grass without a heel lift. And then I've also had guys that literally can, can't squat to parallel or anywhere near it. An interesting thing though is sometimes with those guys, if you split the pelvis and do a single leg, like a rear foot elevated or Bulgarian split squat, then they can get much more range of motion. So it's really just kind of like, it's so tailored to the individual at this level. And then you also have, like this past season we had, when I got here, he was 18 years old, which is you have an 18-year-old kid in the NBA. He's 19 now. Anywhere from that to 34, 35-year-old men who have been all over the league, all over the nation, and different training philosophies, different that. So it's like every athlete has their own individual fingerprint as far as their training age and history, what they like, and then obviously their limitations as well.
How much does the training philosophy vary from one NBA team to the other? I mean, you've been with the Bulls, and we haven't even broached the topic there about what that was like, which I'd love to. And now you're with the Lakers, but is there a pretty substantial difference in training philosophies?
Yeah, there's definitely some different philosophies across the league. And
Really?
when it was interesting, when I was a younger strength coach, I'd kind of like shake my finger like, I don't know, that's not what I do. So obviously with time, age, experience, and wisdom, as long as you have reason, rationale that's backed by science as to what you're doing, why you're doing it, I fully respect you. And if you get player buy-in, I fully respect you as a strength coach and what you do and how you own your workouts and your philosophy and how you rock with your department. That's something that did take a lot of time. And as a younger strength coach, I was kind of naive to that. But there are a lot of different philosophies across the league. I'm very, very fortunate that, in my time from DePaul, Arizona State, to the Chicago Bulls, and now to the Lakers, obviously I had some stops at UConn and Dayton along the way as a head strength coach. But with all those places where I'm in that kind of assistant role, a lot of those philosophies have been very similar. And that's, more of a traditional strength training, loading tissue is something that, reduces the likelihood of injuries, keeps your guys performing at their best. So I've been very blessed to have a lot of really, really smart mentors along the way there.
So let's talk about the Bulls for a minute, though.
Yep.
You get there, you did some interning, and then they brought you up the ranks and became one of the strength coaches there. What was their philosophy like, or what was your philosophy while you were there, and how is it different to where you are now?
Yep. So the Bulls strength and conditioning program, obviously it's kind of historic. Al Vermeil was there, with those 90s Bulls, and Eric Helland. And, that's kind of been a torch that's been passed all over the basketball world. I think at one point there were, from former interns with Al Vermeil and Eric Helland in just the Big Ten alone, which is big time basketball, I think like 9 out of those Big Ten programs came from interning with Eric Helland and Al Vermeil. So that tree is just, very, very, it's full of just great strength coaches, and they're spread out all over the nation. So very fortunate to be a part of that. And, it's definitely very traditional. If you know any of Al Vermeil's stuff, he's big on Olympic lifting, traditional lifts. And, he was way ahead of his time doing what he was doing back in the 80s and 90s. So some of that is like, the gold standard for what's happening now today. And, with his assessments and everything, the guy is just, I think he's in his mid 70s, and he's still sharp as a tack. I still love picking that guy's brain. One of the most beneficial experiences of my entire career was when I got to pick him up and bring him to a Perform Better conference in Chicago, and just spending 45 minutes in Chicago traffic with him in the car was like, wow, this guy, this guy's brilliant, you know? And I was an intern at the time. So it was just like,
Oh yeah. No, I've sat on a few of his lectures, a few conferences where he's presented, and it's just, you every word coming out of his mouth is just
gold.
gold. It
Yeah.
is. Now, in the 90s, of course, this is the dawn of plyometrics, and we were
Yep.
bringing that in, and whether it was Dr. Don Chu or Al himself, but there was others that were really exploring the explosiveness of these type of movements, and it's carried on to this day. But what has kind of gone through the ringer is the volume of work. At one point in time, we were trying to do too much, and then
Yep.
we backed off, and then it's been this fluctuation. So, in regards to plyometrics, the jumps, the hops, leaps, and bounds, where do you place that into your year-round conditioning program? I guess this is where we go into a little periodization. Let's
Right.
talk about that, and where, yeah, I guess let's just start there.
Yeah. So with plyometrics, it's really tough to do that during, the season with 82 games. You might have a back to back. And like we talked about, the guys' individual fingerprints and, their training age and history, and try to get a 34-year-old to do plyometrics in season after he just played 35 minutes. You're probably going to get some cuss words thrown your way. But so I think with the plyometrics, that's definitely something that you implement in more so in the off season, and early off season, especially when those guys aren't on the court as much. And then just like any off season, you prioritize the weight room and taking care of your body, which should always be a priority. And you kind of put your skill development maybe a little bit on the back burner earlier on in that off season, and then the kind of those roles change as the off season progresses. Obviously, you still want to maintain all of your strength and keep building strength, because you want to be performing at your peak, at your best, in the playoffs when it matters. And the in season is one of the longest uninterrupted training blocks there is. But yeah, so long-winded answer, but a lot of our plyometric work is done early off season and off season. And then you can also implement a lot of that stuff if you have kind of lower minute guys that are just kind of hanging out at the end of your bench throughout the course of the season.
Sure. Now, this season, of course, was unlike any that you've had before, whether we're talking strikes and scout players or anything else that years ago that we might have seen. But this year, the season starts end of October, more or less, mid to late October, and then goes all the way. The finals are in June. So, but April is when the playoffs begin. So October, April, but something happened mid-March where just before the playoffs were kicking in, all hell broke loose. So how did that affect? Like, obviously, it affected the NBA season itself and the playoffs and everything. But how did that affect you in your role?
Yeah. So at that time, man, we were rolling. We were, right before the pandemic hit, it was just automatic. Guys were crushing lifts. We'd have, about 10 guys pregame come in, get great work in. Guys on off days, we were busy. And as a strength coach in the NBA, busy is good. It's kind of easy for these guys to put the training aside and just focus, on the hooping. But we were, very fortunate. We had a lot of vets that, kind of paved the way for our younger guys and themselves, and valued taking care of themselves, and knew that we had big aspirations to stay strong and healthy throughout the course of the season and hopefully win a championship. So yeah, when the pandemic first started, we shut things down. Everybody was still a little unsure of what was going to happen. We were still in the facility for a little bit, still training guys, staying ready. And then over when they really shut everything down for, a couple months, we were doing Zoom group workouts with our guys. We'd get everybody, 2 to 3 times a week together, just so they can kind of BS and banter with each other. We sent guys equipment, nothing too crazy. We weren't sending them full racks, but we did send them, a nice little care package of equipment so that, they could participate, do stuff at home. We also made sure, that if those guys wanted access to a facility, that those were safe. People they were working with, were safe and, COVID friendly. So yeah, we kept trucking that entire shutdown, and, we had guys lifting the entire time. Like we had big goals and aspirations, and we knew that, there was something we wanted to take care of, and nobody let their foot off the gas. So when things picked up, we were right back at it. We didn't skip a beat.
So you mentioned the care package. I'm curious because when that came through here, all of our clients and athletes, we sent the same thing. We just called it a goodie bag, and we had resistance bands, a couple different bands,
Yep.
foot wedges, because we do a lot of creating better contact points and timing from the foot on up, and some gliders. What was in your care package?
Very, very similar. Val slides, ramps, couple kettlebells, bands, some basic equipment. A couple guys, we even got power blocks, just so they had a nice set of dumbbells. And then even some guys, like obviously it's very nice to be an NBA athlete. Your paychecks are, a lot bigger than a strength and conditioning coaches, I'll tell you that. But a lot of these guys even went, like I said, we had big goals and aspirations. They wanted to stay healthy and fit. So some of those guys even got like cardio equipment. So it was, it was nice to see all the buy-in that we had from the players over that time.
It's interesting. You kind of mentioned, of course, there's a salary differential there. It's obvious, right? Yeah, that'd be nice if you had a real amazing signing bonus. It was, 7-figure kind of salary there and all that. But it brings up this kind of thing that is very interesting that I haven't experienced personally. But when I get the pros coming in, I've had a former UConn basketball player, former Golden State Warrior, of course, because up in the Bay Area, that would train with me in the off season, and some NHL players and so on, Major League Baseball. But they're just normal guys. They're just
exactly
right. Do you feel the same way, or did you get those stars-struck kind of those eyes swirling in your head when you started?
No. I remember the very first time I met, one of the stars when I was in Chicago. I came in to interview for my internship, and I'm, this is up at the old Berto Center, which is on The Last Dance. And I walk in through the back door, which, I've seen film of, Scotty, Mike, and those guys walking through that back door. And then, my heart's going, and I look at the rack, and it's Derrick Rose, former MVP, and he's doing rear foot elevated front squats, front rack position. And he's got like 185 on there. So, that he's a beast in the weight room. So this is like, my first exposure to a superstar, and they're like, okay, hey, we're going to run up and let everybody know that you're here. Can you just spot Derrick? And I'm just like, okay. For a second I was nervous, and then like, he's, hey man, what's up? Derrick, nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And we start, talking. We actually, it was funny. We played each other from a young age. We're the same age, from the South Side of Chicago. And he kind of remembered some of that, knew where I was from and stuff. So obviously that, once that happens, you realize that you're just talking to a normal person, and it's, that kind of brings it back down. And then you're like, oh, okay, this is, just a normal guy. And that's how, I've been very fortunate. I haven't had to deal with any, crazy prima donna guys. And like, even another really cool story, and this really strikes home with me. Over the course of the bubble, obviously working, around LeBron James, one of the biggest names in all of sports, icon around the world. And after, games, one of the things that we all had to do was wear many hats. We'd help with equipment and this, that. If there was a job that needed to be done, we helped. And to see LeBron get off the bus, grab a bag at 1:30 in the morning post game after just playing 30-40 minutes in a playoff game, and grab some bags off the bus, hey, how can I help? That sets the tone. Like that just shows, if that guy can do that, they're just normal people and they're trying to help. And obviously that's a huge thing with him, and how good of a leader he is.
Yeah, I had to. It would have been remiss if we didn't talk about LeBron, because not only that, but he would appear to me in all the games I've watched, and understanding the movements of just basic human athleticism. He is an aberration. He is just remarkable. Not only his structure, his size, but his speed, his agility, the coordination. That doesn't come along every day. So it's just amazing. So how do you challenge, or do you even try to challenge a phenom of that caliber? Like, is there anything that you and your crew continually try to aspire to get him to his peak performance, or is he just already there with everything that you're already doing?
Don't get me wrong, he's already there. The guy is, like you said, he's just different. But yeah, funny story before I answered. My first year in Chicago, I'm standing at half court, and guys run out of the tunnel, and they run to their basket to warm up, and like I'm standing at half court, and from behind it's just like woof. It was like almost like literally a train or a semi went by, because like you feel the wind kind of like woof, and you hear it, and I'm like, and you look, and it's LeBron. It's just like the guy is ginormous. That was a really cool experience. But so to kind of touch on the answer, LeBron has his guy Mike Mancias, who is his kind of performance liaison, and he is amazing. Has been with him for I think 17 years now. Almost day one. Back in his first year in Cleveland, they've been like inseparable. And to see the stuff that those two do it's still Mike still challenges himself to learn and grow, as we all do as a staff. But he is still cutting edge, still trying to learn what makes not only himself a better trainer but can benefit his athlete. And I'll give it to those two and LeBron. Like LeBron's the first one in the building. Like good luck trying to beat that guy. Even if you're security, good luck trying to beat that guy. He's first one in, most of the time the last one out. Like the work ethic there is unmatched as far as I've seen. And earlier on in my career, it was just like, he's just genetically inclined. He doesn't have to do anything, this, that. But like when you behind the curtain, when you see how much work that guy puts in, it's very impressive. And there's a reason that guy is one of the greatest to ever do it.
Yeah. So let's kind of look forward toward to 2021. What's the season shaping up like? What's your role right now, as we obviously should be into our second month of the season? Where are we?
So, obviously with the crazy calendar year that we just put together this past season, guys that went to the, deep in the playoffs, that made a deep playoff run, need a little time to kind of bounce back and recover, us being one of those teams. But, there were talks about when the season was going to start. Is it going to be in January, February? And the NBA decided that we were going to start, in a couple weeks, in about 2 weeks here. I think the preseason games now, we just got notified, start December 11th. So coming up pretty quick here. Usually every team's going to have about 3 or 4 preseason games. And I think camp, guys are actually reporting back this weekend today to start testing. Some guys will open up camp, I want to say on the 3rd. So, the next week or so, we're about to get it rolling again, which is, kind of crazy. Very, very short, unique off season. But as far as my role right now, just staying in touch with guys, still in the facility for the guys that are in the area, getting their lifts in, taking care of themselves. And then if guys aren't in our area yet, which, they will be in a couple of days as required by the NBA, we just stayed in contact and, put them in touch with great trainers in their area, or, communicated with the guys that they already have set up. So just keeping communication lines open and talking to those guys, almost every other day.
How do you do that with the other trainers you just mentioned, like trying to connect them with other trainers? Is there a network that you use, or you just do the Google search and see who kind of is similar in philosophy to what you guys are doing?
Yeah, very fortunate to have, to work around, Gunnar Peterson, who's been, an icon in fitness and strength conditioning for 30 years. And then Chatton Hill, who's been a head strength coach in the NBA for around 14, 15 seasons now. To have those guys, and then obviously my network of people having been in the professional setting, the college setting, and me loving to network, I've kind of gotten to know a lot of good strength coaches in many different areas and cities. And between, that whole group, we're definitely, not missing out on, we have people in almost every city that we can think of that, train at the same pace, similar philosophies, or sometimes it's nice to get those guys to do something different too, especially early on in the off season. So they're, just not, they're going to get sick of our voice. We spend a lot of time with the guys, and they're going to get sick of our training. So it's nice to kind of get those guys outside of just their normal routine here and there too.
Any examples that you come to mind right now as to something different?
Honestly, like getting guys to do, yoga or like some boxing classes, just, things that you normally wouldn't be able to do from, a time constraint or a risk and liability standpoint in season. Some of those guys do continue to do, different things throughout the course of the season though, too.
And in the course of this season, are we still looking at 80 plus games, or do you know if they're going to reduce it down so that the playoffs will start in April?
Yeah, I think we're going to do 72 games. So taking 10 games off the schedule. And, I think one thing that the league really wanted to do was kind of get back to that normal start time, like you said earlier, October, kind of, starting the season off and wrapping up, in the summer, not going into the fall like we just did.
So I had a conversation not too long ago, recently, with Kate Weiss, who is the sports science coordinator for the Dodgers. And we're talking about the behind the scenes team approach and the networking between the professionals, and what kind of cohesiveness and team approach does the Lakers take, like with the athletic trainer, the physical therapist, the dietitians, or if you've got the team cooks, like what are we looking at with the Lakers? It's as much, obviously, a smaller team, and that's the nice thing about the NBA is you can get really quite personal and really easier to kind of fine tune individual programs, but you need a team approach. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so we have, a handful of athletic trainers. We have a massage therapist, director of sports performance, and then the strength and conditioning staff. We also have our nutritionist and then our team chef. That is kind of what we comprise as like the performance staff. And we meet, we have a Zoom meeting on, Monday. We meet right now because it's a little bit slower, once a week, but in season, we meet every day. We check in with our guys, even if it's just for 5-10 minutes, we talk about issues, anything that we could think of. It's kind of a nice time to get your ideas out there, so we can stay on top of things, put small fires out before they become forest fires.
And you go through the entire roster in these meetings, like, hey, how's this person? You're just checking in with all the players.
Yep. I've seen places where it's not very cohesive, and it's just a disservice to your staff, your athletes, and everybody. So very fortunate to be in a position where everybody works well together. It's seamless. Everybody, we all have the same goal, right? In the end, it's to win a championship. And as long as everybody's just doing what it takes to put your head down, do the work, and get there, that's all that really matters. And everybody on our team, and I say our team, the performance staff, has that goal in mind. So it's really easy when we kind of take a step back and look at the big goal, and we just work together to accomplish that.
So back in the weight room, when you've got the team working out, you got the players, do you use specific tools to help teach or to help correct, like video analysis? Are you videotaping the guys and then you show them, here's your lift right here, this is where I'd like you to be? Like, what kind of tools do you really like to pull from when you're doing your job in the room?
Yeah, like you just said, and this is kind of crazy. This little tool right here is so valuable. It's so easy if you have somebody that's really struggling with something and can't get a movement down. It's so easy now to just take out your phone. There's different apps that track bar speed and all the fun stuff. But like even to just take a slow motion video or a regular video and just break it down frame by frame with that guy, it's so easy to do and such a useful tool. And especially with how young the NBA is getting, with our younger guys who might need a little bit more coaching. They love to use their phones. So if they could see it on a screen, it's really easy for those guys to kind of learn visually.
You mentioned you're seeing younger and younger players. And of course, with every passing year, technology is increasing. So it's great to have those tools. But the other thing that technology does is it takes away from purposeful human movement, right? We're getting to be less active with every passing year and every passing generation. So are you seeing within the NBA itself, I see it within society and American culture, is that the average person is structurally less sound than the previous generation. We're seeing injuries occur at younger and younger ages. Is
Yep.
is that the case with the NBA? Are you starting to see the effects of technological advances in our society in a detrimental way?
I would personally, like, I don't think there's any research on it, at least that I know of. But I will say that I do think that that is a contributing factor to kind of what we're seeing in today's, day and age. I also think another big thing that contributes to that is the specializing too early and getting these guys, like we talked about, playing AAU basketball and travel, club basketball at the age of 4, before, before they're even in kindergarten. And then you just kind of, you're grooving those same movement patterns over and over and over, some of which may not be ideal for that individual. And then, it's just like trying to cut a stone. You keep chipping away, something's going to break eventually, right? It's not the 1000th or the 1 millionth strike. It's, all those strikes before that. So I think, the specialized sports and, not playing other sports now, which, that's become something that's probably a little bit more familiar over the past 10 years or so, when most of your athletes would play 3 or 4 sports and kind of get out of those movement patterns, get into other ones and strength train maybe even differently, or, different agility exercises. Now it's just the same old thing over and over and over. And basketball being a high speed sport with a lot of accelerations, decelerations, and, even some contact there, it can wear you down a little bit. So I think it's a multitude of things that kind of contribute to that. But I do definitely think that the technology and the specialization contribute to those.
In regards to technology, what is it that your organization is harnessing with the tech that's out there? If you could share, not to throw
Yep.
some secrets out there, but what you're willing to share, like what are the Lakers doing with tech that is something that you're going, okay, this is some awesome stuff here. I'm glad we have this, and this is just blowing doors on where we were without it.
Yep. So there's a couple things, obviously I can't dive too much into it, but like something that we just recently got into are force plates. Like we had those in the bubble. We use Hawk and Dynamics. Another couple things that we're doing, we use, it's kind of primitive, if you will, but like we use RPE to get our acute to chronic workload ratios. That's I started doing that back in Chicago with the Bulls, and that's something that I found, when you get a really good relationship with your athletes, to be kind of a nice pulse for your team. But it's a very unique thing in the NBA. Due to the collective bargaining agreement, none of the data collection is necessary. So you can't sit here and tell a guy like, you have to wear this heart rate monitor or this, GPS tracker, which I've used all of those before. And it's really, you get some really great data from that. But like us having, an older roster, we kind of took a step back, and, our guys weren't too big on the tech. So, we'll use RPE, we're getting into the force plates data. And then, the athletic training side of things, they also have a bunch of, Delos and a bunch of other, types of technology that they use. But in the weight room, we keep it pretty simple, just with those things. And, I think, I don't know, one of the things that we kind of hang our hat on is just actually getting guys training, like, and also kind of managing their load, tracking tonnage. We used Bridge last season. We use it this season. It's just a really, it's another easy tech thing that we can use to kind of track guys, programs and loads throughout the course of the season.
So I have a force plate myself, and I've been using it for the better part of, I'd say, 3 or 4 years, primarily to understand mass management and posture, gait mechanics, joint mechanics, and so on, so that I can better create programs for people to wake up areas that they haven't been working, those dark zones that we don't travel into. Also,
Yep.
just in regards to corrective or pain management and that type of thing. What do you use in the force plate for? I'm curious. Is it gait analysis? Is it how much force they're exerting when jumping? What do you do?
Yeah. So honestly, we're still very early in our stages of using it. And like one thing that I learned over the course of my career is not to get lost in data, right? It's very easy to do, especially with something like a force plate where you're getting millions of metrics in a second, in a millisecond. So one of the things we just kind of, we're still looking for our big rocks and what we want to track. There's a lot of different research out there and there's a lot of different people you can talk to, but I think something that we'll kind of look at over time: eccentric rate of force development, asymmetries, right versus left, kind of get a baseline for our guys. God forbid if something happens, we can, we have some baseline data for those guys to get back to after an injury. And that's kind of where we're starting right now. We're in a collecting phase. Like, we're not, trying to, fix all of our problems with a force plate right now. Like, again, it all comes back to just good quality training that will always take precedence over any of the data and the collection. So, that's kind of what we're doing now.
Well, it's obviously you're doing a whole bunch of things that are right, because you're hoisting a trophy. And I think there's a very big ring coming your way if you haven't got it on your finger already.
Yeah.
Show the bling or anything?
I wish I had it. We don't get it probably until the start of the season, or obviously with the season starting up pretty soon, it might even we might not get it until a couple games in. But as a strength and conditioning coach, there's so many different things that contribute to a championship, and being around that. And you just said we're doing something right. Who knows if we are? I definitely think it helps when you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis and some of the other guys that we had this past season. So never going to take full credit, and I'll just kind of, attribute everything that we've done to the culture that, Rob Pelinka and our management has kind of built throughout, bringing the guys that we have in, like LeBron and Anthony and our leaders. And, even, like Rondo, some of our, he's no longer with us, but some of those guys that really helped set the tone and set the culture and, build what we've made. Well,
you've made an amazing impact on a whole bunch of people. And I just got to say, it hurts me to say it, but that's great. I would say I would look forward to a repeat, but that would top with the NBA championship count. So we're going to kind of push that off the side. I'm not that big.
Gotcha.
So, and this has been great. I just thank you for taking the time out. I'm glad I could get you before the season really kicks underway, but I know your days are full these days getting ready for it. So I just want to say thanks for putting a little bit of time aside for this.
I appreciate that. And, hopefully we're having this, another discussion like this same time next year. And I, got two of them, not to rub it in, because, there's not a single thing of green in this house right now.
Yeah,
but
when I hear
it's crazy how that rivalry
is. Go to the Celtics. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
No, but Rocky, I really appreciate you having me on here, and look forward to still mixing it up, still chatting, and keeping in touch.
Definitely.
And that's it for another episode of the Zelos podcast. And I just want to say thanks so much to Ed Streit and the LA Lakers organization for taking some time and sharing a little bit of insight as to their championship season. Wishing them, of course, the best for next year, as hard as that is. But if you missed last week, we had Ridge Kiley on, who's the strength coach for Cirque du Soleil. That was a pretty cool episode. You get to find out behind the scenes of acrobats and artists and athletes that do amazing things in Vegas. Be sure to tune in next week as we have another guest. Thanks for listening.